This is something that I would like to ask you. Does it bother you that artists that have literally, there's one thing between being influenced and then another thing basically just taking artists that are relevant now that have not only made the commercial success, but they've taken your act.
I have seen that. I have seen that, but I can't.
That flattery, that whole, saying that, mocking or taking his flattery. I don't find that.
No, I mean, sometimes, yeah. There's a lot of times, and I think, Christ, if I hadn't have done that, this would never be there, And it does bother. It wouldn't bother me, I suppose, if we had gotten in a place where we should have been, really. But that's unfortunately that's the kind of.
It'd be inappropriate for me to mention a name. It would, correct?
No.
Like the Marilyn Manson thing. Does that bother you? He's
No. It's weird. No, it doesn't. Although, in my heart, I know if me and a few other people hadn't done what we did, he wouldn't exist. But it doesn't bother me because I wouldn't do what he does. It sometimes bothers me if someone says something about him and say, why don't you do that? Because then I can't quite understand it. But no, good luck to him. He's doing his own thing. And, I mean, it goes back to, with Marilyn Manson, I would say it would go back to things like Alice Cooper as well, I mean, I see.
He's just barely getting the recognition now, though.
Yeah, I know. But there were bands. Well, unfortunately, we're one of those bands, like a lot of those bands in the '60s, that were brilliant, but just didn't really make it to the big time, And yet now, people are rediscovering them and they're influencing. I mean, that was one thing. The Damned was good for. Was if we did a cover, and people really liked it, then they would find. Whole parts of music that they didn't know existed, and that was always a great thing. I liked that, being able to turn kids on to finding stuff that they didn't know about, because that's what I did. You search for things, and you're so happy when you get them. Although now it's a lot easier because you can just put it in the Google and there it is. In our day, it used to be searching through millions of albums in.
But that was the pleasure, though.
I still love it. I loved it. And also, you felt a bit sort of, well, this is mine, and no one else knows about this. I've got this,
It was an accomplishment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, on the first British tour I ever did, we went to Scotland, and I remember this so clearly for some reason, to a shop called Bruce's Record Shop. And I went through the records, and I found a single of The Shadows of Night, Oh Yeah, and I was like, that made the whole tour for me, just finding that vinyl. And at the time, no one knew who the hell they were. They had no idea in England, So it was, I still got it as well. I still play it occasionally.
Let me ask you this, because so much has been talked about and praised, righteously so, about the Damned's music. How do you feel, and I don't know if you've been asked this before, during American quote-unquote maneuvers in the Middle East, Smash It Up was a song that was being played during operations. How do you feel about that?
Well, I don't know how I feel about it. It's one of those things where...
standard, because, I mean, Joe Strummer, it's been documented, he cried when
it's one of those things where that's the thing. When your music goes out there, it can be used by people, and it's not always used for what you want it to be used for, or the meaning can become changed, and unfortunately it's just that gamble of what you do. I mean, I don't like it, but there's not an awful lot you can do about it.
New music. We talked about the legacy. When you're writing new music, does that hover over your head, or how do you distance yourself to retain that purity zone of creativity?
Because it's difficult to explain, but it's still the same as it was actually writing. Nothing really gets in the way of that. Just because it kind of comes in a weird way. It's either fully formulated and there it is, or it creeps up on you, but it kind of writes itself sometimes, And often I don't know where it's going to go, and then I'll work with Captain, and he'll change things, and I'll change things of his, and suddenly before you know it, this thing's born, So, and that's half the fun of it, And sometimes the fun is also the pressure where people say it's never going to happen. There was a track we did, in fact we're going to play it tonight, the one that's about the Abominable Dr. Phibes, 13th Floor. And I started to play the piano, I had this idea for it, and we'd been watching that film a lot, off and on, because I love that film. And we were working on in the studio. It was the last track to be done. And we started work on it, and Rat went to bed at about 10 o'clock and said, look, forget it. This is never going to happen. It's rubbish. It's not going to happen. But what happened was Captain Duran said, right, we can actually get it written now. And we worked right through the night, and we basically wrote the whole thing. I wrote the lyrics while Captain was putting some guitars down, and we mixed it, and by dawn it was done, and the whole thing. And to be honest, we felt it was the best track we'd produced on that album, you know, the sound of it and everything. So when that happens, it's fantastic, you know. But also, the thing about The Damned is all those albums were done on tight budgets of no money and no time. It was always the case, you know, other bands were going in for 6 months or something and doing an album. We had 3 weeks and that's it, you know, and you're out of here, sort of thing, and sometimes less.
Very, very organic and very get it
Right.
done.
And we were always trying to get the performance as well, more than, you know, so you get. But and also, of course, we used to create all our own sounds back then because there weren't so many synthesizers and things, and we'd go rummaging through the kitchen drawers finding implements to make noises with and stuff on the tracks. So
This is very interesting. You're about to go on stage. Multi-generations of Dan Fent.
Yeah.
From children to people my age.
grandchildren.
But they all are going to experience, and you're going to be witnessing in their eyes what you bring out and why you've had this longevity. Is it rewarding for you?
Terrifying,
And how do you
isn't
feel about that?
I like it, you know, otherwise I wouldn't be here. Yeah, because I mean, you know,
Rewarding?
it is, yeah. I mean, otherwise I really wouldn't be here doing it because I don't make enough money at it, for one thing.
That's a fucking crime.
You know, it's like, it's tough. It's not an easy, I mean, it's not ridiculously tough, but it's not an easy thing sometimes. And, you know, when I think about it, like, I think I'm amazed how many times I've done New Rose, for instance, which we've practically almost played at every single gig I've ever done, barring one or two. But I still like it when it comes up. I still hear that drums. I still, you know, so I think that's a good thing, you know. I've not got bored with it. Because some people can't stand their stuff, can they? You know, I can't listen to that anymore. You know.
The Damned, 40 years. You have a documentary film that's out that really...
We do. I haven't actually seen it yet, though.
Is that purposely?
No, it's because I haven't seen it yet.
haven't had time?
The guy that made it hasn't sent me a copy of it or anything, and I didn't get to see it. So yeah, hopefully I'll see it at some point.
I personally want to thank you for not only till this day still leading the pack, still bringing true rock and roll rawness and excitement.
I hope after he sees the show he's going to say that.
But here's the deal. I want to thank you for being sincere. You're up there on stage, and that is something that we're losing nowadays with musicians, is being sincere.
Shame. It's a real shame. Well,
Yeah, it is.
well, that's, as I said before, that's kind of worked against us as well, because we've always been very honest, you know, and that's the way it is, and I like it that way, you know. And if it goes wrong because you're honest, that can't be right, can it? You know.
You know what? As long as you're happy with it, that's all that matters.
Well, exactly, yeah.
Right.
You know, it's a shame more musicians aren't true of themselves that way, you know.